Welcome to HR Insight, where I simplify human resource concept. On today's episode, I'm going to be taking a deep dive into how to create HR dashboard using Excel. A very good place to start from is, what is an HR dashboard? An HR dashboard is a data visualization, or what we usually call a visual display of important HR metric, HR statistics, and insight in a single screen. The primary purpose of an HR dashboard is for decision making by the management team of the organization. When you're able to do a data visualization of your HR metric, your HR statistic, and insight in a single screen, what you have is an HR dashboard. Now, your HR dashboard contains important metrics. So metrics like if you could have the workforce head count, workforce average length of service, average age, the age distribution of your organization in a single screen. That would be able to assist a lot of strategic business decisions that are related to HR, because you need to keep track of those things that are important to human resources. This is a typical HR dashboard. Now, what you would notice from what you have on your screen at the moment is that at a glance, you can see the numbers of employees. That's the employee head count. You can see the average employee age. You could see the average length of stay. You can see the gender distribution of that organization. You can even go ahead to see the numbers of employees by the job grade. Then you have the age distribution, the employee length of service, the numbers of employees hired per year. Then you can be able to even drill down into your data. Now, this is a typical example of an HR dashboard. Now, it's important for me to say that depending on what you want to display, what you want to use data visualization to show, or everything you want in HR can be displayed in a data form, more like a visual representation, or what we call data visualization. You would determine what you want to show on the dashboard. In order to make to walk you through that process, I'm going to be getting into Excel now, and I'm going to take a simple data example, and I will create a simple HR dashboard from it. Remember to check in the description of this video to check the sample data and the finished dashboard that I create from that data. There would be a link in the description where you can be able to download it. So quickly download that practice file, so that as I get into Excel, you can walk along with me. Now, for you to be able to create a dashboard in Excel, there are some Excel features that you must get familiar with. And for what you're seeing on the screen right about now, this is a pivot chart. These two are Excel pivot chart that is tied to a pivot table. Now, for a quick introduction to the pivot table in Excel, there is a video I did in an earlier episode on how you can use pivot table to create HR reports. I would have the link show above on the card above right about now, so that you can download and have a refresher on how to use pivot table. But if you're already familiar with using pivot table, then you can go ahead with the video. Now, we're going to be using pivot table. We're going to be using pivot chart to create all we have on the screen. And interestingly, we have a slicer. This you have here is a slicer. For you to understand the way slicers work, if I click in here now, can you notice that something is happening on the data on the screen? Now, this is showing the numbers of the finance department for the organization, their age distribution, how many are there. You can see 11, the average age is 44, 13, then the numbers. If I go to another department, production seems to have the largest number of people in this organization. We have 57 in the organization, 40 average age, 11 average length of service. Now, what I've done here is what we call a dynamic HR dashboard, and that's what I'm going to be teaching, walking you through how to create now. So let me open up the practice file right now. This is the practice file that we're going to be working with, and let me just walk you through the most important part in the practice file. So the link to download this practice file is in the description below. So you see employee ID, gender, hire date, date of birth, today's date, age. Now this is an already processed data. This data has been processed already. If you are to replicate what I'm doing now with your own organization's data, you would need to process your data to have a replica of what I have at the moment. Now, this data has been converted into Excel table already. So that's critical. It's been converted into an Excel table already. Now, what I'm going to be using now is the pivot table functionality to create the various part of the dashboard. In order to make it interesting, since I've created it as an Excel table, anytime you create a data as an Excel table, it will group the entire data together. And if you go to the table design functionality, what you would notice is that on that table design functionality, there is a feature here called summarize with pivot table. Now, what pivot table does is to summarize the data in the table using a pivot table. It makes it easy to arrange and summarize complicated data and drill down on the details of the data. So what we're going to do now is that we would click on the summarize the pivot table functionality. Now immediately you click with summarize the pivot table, you would have a pop-up window that will come up asking you a few questions. Now the question that you're going to be asked is select the table or the range where the data is. Then are you creating it on a new worksheet? For now, I'm going to create it in a new worksheet. Then I click OK. If you remember the file, the pivot table that we're trying to replicate, what you will see here are the various elements of the pivot table itself. So I have the employee age distribution. This is created using a pivot chart. This is also created using a pivot chart. This is a pivot table. This is another pivot table, and this is a slicer. So what I'm going to do first is to create each of this pivot chart using the employee age distribution, the employee length of service, and the other components. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create the age distribution, and to be able to do that, I would pick age in my pivot table field. Now I'm using age distribution. I'll put it in rows. Then I will take employee ID and I put it under values. Now what you would have at the moment is the summarized version of the employee data. Now I would now create these as what we call a pivot chart. Now immediately you click in there on your analyze on your tab, you will see pivot chart. Once you click on pivot chart, then you have a pop-up window that comes up on asking what type of chart are you trying to create. Then I click OK. Yes, I want to use a column chart because I'm doing comparison. I click OK. Then I will do the further customization on this. Now the further customizations I'm going to do is that I would rename it. I will take off the legend. I'll click on the legend, take it off. Then I will hide this field button. So I'll click on it. I'm going to hide the field button. So I'll just click on this. Then it gives me an option, and the option I'm going to be using is hide all field button on chart. And immediately I'm done. All I need to do now is the renaming of my charts. So I'm going to rename the chart now. I will double click this and give it a name, employee age distribution. Okay, so I've named it employee age distribution. I have the first component of my dashboard, which is the employee age distribution. Then I'll go back to my original data. Now this time around, I'm going to create another pivot table. I'll create another pivot table. Then I would say new worksheet, which is fine. Then this time around, I would need to create the employee length of service range, which I've already created. I will put the employee ID under values, and now this time around, length of service, which is LOS range, under rows. I'll rename this as LOS. Then you can see that all the length of service has now been broken down. Then I would create a pivot chart from it. Under analyze, you will see pivot chart. Then this time around, I'm not going to use a column chart. I want to use a bar chart. So I'll use a bar chart now. Then the next thing is the customization bit of it. The first thing I'm going to customize is that I will hide all field buttons on charts. I'll take away the legend. Then I'm going to rename the charts now. This time around, I'm going to call it employee length of service distribution. So my second chart is ready. Now I have my two charts from the original sample pivot chart that we're working with. This is what we're working with. This is what we're trying to achieve. So we already have the employee age distribution already. We have the employee length of service. The remaining component is here. Now, in order for me to do that, I'm going to create a new worksheet, and I'm going to rename it. I'm going to rename this worksheet as dashboard. That's where all my data, main data is going to sit in. I'm going to bring a pivot table on this worksheet that you have here. And how to do that is this. I'll go to my data. I'll evoke my summarize with pivot table. This time around, remember for the two charts that I've done already, I worked more with a new worksheet. That's where I want my pivot table reports to go to. This time around, I'm going to use existing worksheets. Then I will click on the location. Then I will navigate to my dashboard. Then identify where I want it to be, meaning my pivot table. Then I'll pick it there. I want my pivot table to come here, and I click OK. Now, immediately that is done, what you would notice is this. A new worksheet gets created. I need three parameters. The first parameter, so I'm going to take the employee ID to values. I will take the age to rows as well. I'll click on it, then it goes to, you can see it coming up on the screen. I'm going to do some further customization in a bit. Then I'll pick length of service as well. Then all three has now been formed on the screen. But hold on, I want them to come up as an horizontal. And in order for that to work, all I'm going to do is to drag values. You can see the values field. You can see the values field here. I'm going to drag it to rows. And immediately I do that, what you would notice is that this entire data is now showing up very close to the sample data that I showed you. Now, we're going to do some further customization now. Now, the further customization I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing some edits on each of this. So I'm going to edit this as HR metric, or let me use the word key HR metric. Then for count of employee, I will come here and call it employee ed count. Please take note when you are doing this edit, you do it in the formula bar. Then at the moment, this is showing some of age. Now, I'm going to convert it to average age, and the same thing I'm going to do for length of service. In order to be able to do that, you would right click on the sum of age. It is showing the sum of the age at the moment. I'll right click on it, and I would go to values field, click on values field, then the pop-up comes up on values field, pick average. We want it to show the average age of the employees. I would do the same thing for the sum of length of service. I will right click on it, go to values field, then toggle down to average and click OK. Now you would notice that now it is showing the average age and average length of service. I'm going to do some further customization, but if you notice, as I am doing the customization, my pivot table field is actually moving around. There are some formatting that are there. In order to prevent that from happening, I will click on that pivot table. I go to my pivot table analyze. On the left hand side, I would click on this pivot table and go to options and uncheck auto fit column weights on update, and I click OK. Then I can do further customization, take away the decimal point, go to right click on that number format, then I go to numbers and reduce that to decimal, and I click OK. You can see it has gone to 40. Then I do the same thing for this as well. Right click, number format, go to number, reduce the number formatting to 0 decimal places. Then that is now highlighted. I can now centralize this just for it to be central. Now my dashboard is forming out. The next thing I want is that I'm going to put another pivot table here. And that pivot table I'm going to put here is the gender. In order for me to do that, I'll go back to my main data. On my main data, how to do that, you click, it's already a pivot table. Go to pivot table design, then summarize. Then the pop-up window comes up. Remember, I want to use existing worksheet. I click on the existing worksheet, click on location, navigate to my dashboard sheet that I've created, and indicate where I want the pivot table to appear. I put the pivot table here and I click OK. Now immediately that happens, the next thing I'm going to do is I want this to summarize gender. I'll drag my gender to rows and employee ID to value so that it can count the numbers. Now you notice what just happened. It's auto fitting and it has scattered that initial format. All I need to do is to click on that new pivot table, go to pivot table analyze, on the left hand side options, and I'm going to do two things. Now you could see at the moment it is showing the grand total. I already want it to show employee head count, so I don't want this total to be there again. So two things I'm going to do under options now. I will remove the auto fit column, then I will go to totals and filters, and I will remove grand total such that it is not going to show that again. And you will now notice I can now auto fit to what I want, such that the total head count here is what this is also adding up to, so that there is no duplication. I will now centralize this now. Then I'll do some further edits. In the formula tab, I'll put gender here. Then I will put count here. Just edit the count. Then my dashboard is already ready. So the next conversation now is that I am going to bring the two pivot charts that I've created already into this dashboard. So I'll go to the first one, which is age. I'll right click on that sheet and go to move chart. Immediately I do that, it will ask me where am I moving the chart to. I am moving it to dashboard and I click OK. Then you can start to see that yes, the first chart is there. I'm going to hide this pivot table field. I don't want it to be popping up every time. The next thing is that I go to length of service, distribution, right click on it, move charts. Then I move it to dashboard and it goes to my dashboard and I can realign it here. Now I can also toggle so that it can show on one single screen. As it were. As it is now, my dashboard is already forming out. I can resize at will as I want, such that everything shows in one single screen. That's the whole idea of a dashboard. Then I resize as well. Then I can change the width of each of this. All I need to do is to right click. These are just formatting as it were. You're good to go on the format as it were. But if you're familiar with this edit, you can do further customization to the width. You could as well change the colors of the charts also, just to give you a representation of whatever you want. But all of those are customization that you can choose to add or not add as it were. So let me just do that. Okay, so that's just me just customizing the look and feel of what I have there. So this customization is left to you. Now the last piece of my dashboard is my slicer. Now the last bit of my dashboard is my slicer. Now to bring my slicer, you will click on the pivot table, go to pivot table, analyze. Then here you will see your slicer here. So that's the slicer, and I'm going to click on slicer. Now what your slicer does basically is it's used for filtering through the data. Now the dashboard I'm creating is called a dynamic HR dashboard. So I click on my slicer. This time around I just want to use a common factor to slice through, and I'll use department, and I click OK, and immediately that is done, I'll just drag it to where I want it to be. Then I can do some further customization to this. I want you to just sit quietly here. Now it's having just one single column. I can do further customization. Once I click on the slicer, the contextual tab called slicer gets highlighted. I'll go to column and change it to 2 column, and immediately I'm done. You can see that it has created 2 columns for my department. Now I'll close this. I don't want that to disturb me at the moment. Then the next thing I'm going to do, my dashboard is already let me rename my dashboard first. Let me write HR dashboard here. So I'll name my dashboard HR dashboard. Then I'll just change the formatting a little bit. Then the next bit is I would go to view, and you can see grid lines. I will uncheck it. Then you see that the entire dashboard is now cleared out. If I want to see everything very well, if I just change the zoom in, and you can see that my dashboard is showing in a single window. Now at the moment, if I work with my slicer, this is what you're going to notice. Now my slicer is only changing the key metric at the moment, and every other part of my pivot table remains the same. Now this slicer is what makes it dynamic. Now if I click on my slicer to make that dynamic, all I need to do is to click on my slicer. Then you would see report connection. I click on report connection. Then I will I will connect that slicer to all the pivot table and pivot chart that is on the worksheet I'm working with, and I click OK. Immediately I do that, what you would notice is this. If I click finance now, what you're noticing is that everything is now changing, so that you understand the beauty of it. There you have it. Total numbers of employee is 115. Out of the 115 employees that we have, how many is in HR? So I click on HR on the filter, on the slicer. Then you can see everything is summarized. I have 5 in HR, an average age of 31, average length of service of 5, 3 females, 2 male, and you can see their age demographics and how long they have stayed within the organization. Very beautiful, and you can start to drill down through your data. So I want to believe this has been very, very interesting for you, right? It's a new learning, how you can create an HR dashboard in Excel. I also did a video on how you can do exactly the same dashboard using Power BI. You can get to watch that video by clicking on the card right about now. Remember to download the practice file and to be able to have the finished HR dashboard sample that I just created. Thank you very much for watching today's episode. I'll see you in the next episode.